100 Years of Solitude. Man, what a book. Hi everyone, welcome back to Literary Canon. Today I am going to be discussing the novel 100 Years of Solitude, or Cien Años de Soledad, by Colombian author Gabriel García Márquez. It has been a while, hasn't it? I think the last video I posted on my channel was back in October or November about Juan Rulfo's Pedro Páramo. And that's actually very fitting for today's video because Gabriel García Márquez was greatly inspired by Pedro Páramo when he was writing 100 Years of Solitude. So, enough preamble. 100 Years of Solitude opens with one of the most evocative lines in literary history. Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. It's just full of such great imagery. It immediately sets us up with some interesting questions. Who is this Colonel Aureliano Buendia? Why is he facing a firing squad? What does it mean to discover ice? When I first read that, I was picturing climbing a mountain and finding the ice caps on top of the mountain. The reality of it is a little bit more mundane. His father takes him through a camp of gypsies in their town of Macondo, and he sees for the very first time an ice cube, and it's treated as this magical object that could transform their town and lives. I think really what these first couple opening lines do is plunge us into the world of Macondo, which is where 100 Years of Solitude is set. At that time, Macondo was a village of 20 adobe houses built on the bank of a river of clear water that ran along a bed of polished stones, which were white and enormous, like prehistoric eggs. The world was so recent that many things lacked names, and in order to indicate them, it was necessary to point. Macondo really serves as the center of the events of 100 Years of Solitude. It's a town that's founded in isolation, and as we move through these 100 years, we see that it is going to mirror the birth, the growth, and the struggle of civilization itself. 100 Years of Solitude is all about the lives, the struggles, the misfortunes of the Buendia family over 7 generations and a century. One of the first things you'll notice when you open the book is the family tree. And you will be consistently returning to this family tree over the course of reading the book, as it can be a little bit confusing. We consistently see Jose Arcadios, Aurelianos, Arcadios, Aureliano Joses. The names repeat themselves over and over again over the course of these generations. What's happening here is every generation we're seeing these characters that are inhabiting the same names. They have the same physical traits, and they tragically inherit the same flaws. It's not just happening to confuse us. Time in Macondo doesn't move in a straight line. It's not linear like we expect it. It is circular. It's a wheel. These characters are trapped. 100 Years of Solitude is concerned with the repeating of history, with destiny, with predestination. These characters are doomed to repeat the same mistakes that their ancestors did time and time again, over and over. She shuddered with the evidence that time was not passing as she had just admitted, but that it was turning in a circle. This brings us to another central theme in the novel, which is that of solitude. It's in the name, or isolation. Every character in the Buendia family suffers from this inability to truly connect and love others. Many of them, to cope with this, lock themselves away. They get stuck in these obsessive loops. We have one character who spends decades and decades fighting endless, countless civil wars, and then eventually they lock themselves away in a room and consistently over time continue to make these little goldfishes. And when they finish the goldfishes for the day, they melt them down and start over again. Other characters, their solitude is a little bit more subtle. They're part of a community, they interact with their family, but they're not able to truly connect. Within the Buendia family, you consistently see these characters that choose the safety of isolation over the vulnerability of the real world. Then he made one last effort to search in his heart for the place where his affection had rotted away, and he could not find it. Jose Arcadio Buendia, who is the founding member of the Buendia family and the founder of Macondo, is forced to leave his home village with his wife and cousin Ursula. The Buendias like to keep it in the family, when an unforgivable insult happens following a cockfight that Jose Arcadio Buendia won. This man, Prudencio Aguilar, insinuates that Jose Arcadio Buendia is impotent. This is because Ursula does not want to sleep with Jose Arcadio Buendia. She is racked with nightmares that their child will be born with the tail of a pig. She was warned this from her mother, who said that was the only thing that could come from their incestuous relationship. So Jose Arcadio Buendia, after this insult, kills Prudencio Aguilar with a spear through the neck. And eventually the ghost of Prudencio returns and haunts Jose Arcadio, and he is forced to leave the village. They cross over the mountains. During the crossing, Ursula gives birth to their first child, who thankfully is not born with the tail of a pig. And eventually they get into the rainforest and they found Macondo, which of course starts out very small in isolation. It's only 20 adobe huts. But as time goes on, more and more of the outside world starts to find its way to Macondo. At first you get these gypsies that come into the town every March with different inventions and magical things like flying carpets. We see alchemy brought to the town and science with these gypsies, magnets. Some of the more mundane things like magnets and ice are treated as more magical than things like flying carpets. Eventually the isolation of Macondo is fully shattered. The son of Jose Arcadio Buendia, Aureliano Buendia, watches corruption brought to the town after the government forces its way in. The government of Colombia is a conservative regime, and disillusioned with the corruption, Aureliano Buendia joins the liberal rebellion, and he becomes Colonel Aureliano Buendia. He fights 32 civil wars. He loses every single one of them. This whole section of the book is based on the Thousand Days War, a real event in Colombian history when the Liberal Party incites a civil war against the conservative ruling regime. Eventually, the conflict draws on so long that they forget why they're fighting. You see liberals and conservatives arguing over minor details of the treaties while thousands of soldiers are dying in the jungle. The war itself is becoming just another endless, meaningless loop, just like the time itself in Macondo. Picture the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail in a circle. We see Colonel Aureliano Buendia achieve immense power and fame within Colombia, but as this power and fame grows, his isolation and his solitude deepens. He's emotionally hollowed out by this war. He becomes a shell of himself. The very violence he thought would save his country has left him a wreck of a man. Eventually, after these 32 civil wars, Colonel Aureliano Buendia returns to Macondo completely disillusioned. He locks himself away and continues to make these tiny little goldfishes day after day after day. The true tragedy of Macondo arrives on the back of a train. With the railroad comes a foreign, American-owned banana company. This entire section of the book is deeply rooted in Latin American history, specifically the United Fruit Company, an American corporation that would go to Latin America, rely on local labor to create tropical fruit plantations, specifically primarily bananas, and then sell these tropical fruits in America and Europe. With the banana company, Macondo is suddenly flooded with money and technology and modern progress. The executives of the banana company treat the locals of Macondo like disposable labor. The executives build these fenced-in compounds completely separated from the rest of the town. They look like completely different countries. They've separated themselves from the people they are exploiting. Eventually, the plantation workers get sick of it and they strike. They start to demand basic rights and humane working conditions, and the banana company is not happy with that. Eventually, the army is called in, and the banana company and the army pin in these striking workers in the town square, and this is directly based on the 1928 Banana Massacre. These United Fruit Company workers were gunned down by the Colombian army. But eventually the narrative is rewritten, and it's unclear how many people truly died. There are estimates of up to 2,000, but the official report from the Colombian army says only 42. This is directly reflected in the book when one of the members of the Buendia family who incited the strike is stuck on a train seeing 3,000 dead bodies. But when he arrives back to Macondo, no one believes him. No one will listen to him. The search for and extermination of the hoodlums, murderers, arsonists, and rebels of Decree No. 4 was still going on, but the military denied it even to the relatives of the victims who crowded the commandant's office in search of news. You must have been dreaming, the officer insisted. Nothing has happened in Macondo. Nothing has ever happened, and nothing ever will happen. This is a happy town. And that way, they were finally able to wipe out the Union leaders. You have this collective memory of the massacre being wiped clean. Only one survivor remembers the truth, and the rest of the world is sleeping in this comfortable deniability. So 100 Years of Solitude is clearly dealing with this heavy historical trauma, but it's very famous and well known for its whimsy. Things like flying carpets and ghosts and an insomnia plague and levitating priests. This is because 100 Years of Solitude is one of the founding texts of the magical realism movement. It's a very popular writing style in Latin American literature where essentially the supernatural is treated as entirely mundane. At one point, you have a character ascending into heaven while she's folding laundry, but the rest of the family isn't shocked by that. They're just annoyed by the fact that now they've lost their laundry. The style is used a lot in Latin American literature because these journalistic facts can't fully capture the surreal reality of Latin America and its history. Waves of unfathomable violence, these corrupt dictators, beautiful, untamed landscapes, all of it feels magical and nightmarish all at once. So these magical elements within the story aren't actually a way to escape from reality. This is not fantasy. It's a way to accurately express reality. 100 Years of Solitude is a beautiful novel. It's a funny novel. It's a tragic novel. It is a raunchy novel. It's a deeply depraved novel. Ants. Ants is all I'm going to say. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. It's also a bit of a warning. It's telling us that when a society refuses to face its past, if its history is erased and forgotten, it's condemned to repeat these same tragic cycles. You see this with the Buendia family as they continue to repeat the same mistakes that their ancestors made. It is a tough read. You're going to get bogged down. You're going to get confused by the names. You're going to have to keep going back to that family tree, but it is worth it, especially as those final pages tie together everything you've read. You're going to realize that it's not just a story. You're witnessing the rise and fall of humanity itself. I try to keep this discussion relatively spoiler light. I did discuss some things that happened towards the back half of the novel, but this is a novel that's difficult to spoil because even if you know what happens, you're still going to enjoy the ride. And that honestly ties back into the cyclical nature of time in Macondo. Especially when you get to the end, you'll understand. But it's great. If you've read it, let me know what you think, what you thought about it. If you haven't read it, I hope you give it a shot. I don't think you'll regret it. Did you guys just see my cat? Anyway, I'm so glad to be back to making videos on YouTube. Please consider giving this video a like, maybe subscribe to my channel if you like what you're seeing here. I'm very excited for my next video. I've already finished the books that it's going to be about, 2 different books. So if you enjoyed this, definitely come back for that. Thank you so much.